I want to talk about making foods more nutrient dense. And so my recipe today really focuses on making something that may be, certain comfort foods to certain people and certain cultures, but what can we do to add nutrients to it to make it more nutrient dense? But I always like to give the example of pasta or pizza. So what's something that we can do to kind of elevate the nutrition profile of that? So pizza can use a whole wheat crust, use our own marinara sauce, right? That's a little bit lower in sugar. Those are all good options. Obviously, using cheese, but then using vegetables, right? Using any sort of vegetables, vegetables that are high in fiber, adding some sort of like extra protein to that, whether it be shrimp or, pepperoni is a little bit of a higher fat protein, but even some of that's adding a little bit of protein to that, which are all really good things to do. Pasta, not adding the powdered cheese, but adding like a good quality cheese. Also adding vegetables to your pasta. I'm always a big proponent of throwing in vegetables to your pasta. If we're making a sauce, throwing in those chia seeds that we spoke about the other day. These are all things that we can do. We want to find vehicles to add more nutrients in. Pasta, sauces, pizzas, these are all really great vehicles to add more nutrients.
So I'm actually going back to the UK today. I'm going to do kind of a traditional English breakfast kind of brunch. It's actually called Bubble and Squeak. For some reason, England has really funny names, like for certain foods. This is one of them, okay? So, and also we're talking about elevating the nutrient in the dishes. I'm actually going to show you how I did it today. All right, so we're going to leave some skin on our potatoes. Bubble and Squeak is really like leftovers. It could be leftover cabbage. It could be leftover Brussels. Traditionally it is cabbage though, so I'm going to use cabbage today. Obviously this is not a leftover, but I'm going to do it from scratch because I just think it's so delicious. And if you're going to do one thing this semester, do this. So I'm going to do my potato, right? I'm going to do on and off, so I keep some of the skin on. And also I've got different coloured potatoes. I'm going to try and keep them all at the same size. Right. And then we're going to boil these. Look how beautiful. And you know what? I made this morning and I think to myself, this is such a nice thing to have. I should do it more often. All right, I think that's enough for now. So I've got some water boiling. I'm just going to place that in the water. I don't want to splash, so I can get that going. Now add a little bit of salt. Once these are nearly done, I'm going to steam some cabbage. So I go right over the top and the cabbage is steamed. Right. Now, this is how it comes out. Now I'm going to saute this in the pan nice and hot. So I have my steamed cabbage and my potatoes. I've mashed them already. I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil spray, and that's going to get like a really, really good crust on it. I'm going to put it in now. All right, so now this is getting hot. I'm going to put this in along with the cabbage. So we're going to leave that. While that's going, I'm going to let that come into a nice crunch. I am going to I put some mushrooms in the pan, so I've got them cooking. And then I'm going to put fried tomatoes. And you know what? If they don't have fresh tomatoes, they use a can of tomatoes over there. And it's for breakfast. I keep them big so they stay together.
What a vegetable-filled breakfast. That's great.
I know, right? Lots of different things going on here. Right, so that's cooking. The last thing to do is I'm going to make a little scrambled egg. The egg yolk is really, really good for you. If you have high cholesterol, you could use one full egg and then just the egg white of another egg. If you don't have cholesterol, you can absolutely use both yolks. Okay, it's still really good. So I'm just taking the egg white. You see the egg white there? Just dropping that in. So we still get like a nice amount. So I've got the one yolk. I'm going to put a little bit of salt and pepper. And I'm going to whisk it quickly. But before I do go over to the final finish, I do want to show you the crust coming out of the Bubble and Squeak. Can you see how it's forming a nice crust?
Oh yeah, it's getting brown on the bottom there. Yeah.
And that is freaking lovely Bubble and Squeak. We had this a lot growing up. All right, so let me go over to the final. So this is a traditional English breakfast. I didn't put bacon on there. If you want to
Beautiful.
if you use, I
Wow.
suggest you use turkey bacon. See, I have my tomatoes and my mushrooms, Bubble and Squeak, and the eggs. And just as something, I did some fruit. I did some cantaloupe.
Gorgeous. Do you have
And
mint on the top there? Is that what that is?
yes, I do. I have mint on the top.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I have a little dot of mint. And the water of the week is lemon and basil.
Making a polenta, making a vegan polenta. So the first thing I did, what I have going on in this pot is I put a cup of cornmeal and 3 cups of water. It's coming to a boil right now. And then once it comes to a boil, I'm just going to simmer it for a few minutes. And then that's going to really cook for a few minutes and become this really, really creamy polenta. And then I'm going to show you what I'm going to add to that. But before I do that, while you have your polenta kind of cooking all together, we're going to make our little vegan topping. I had 1 tomato left. I like to use the Roma tomatoes for this, but it doesn't actually matter. I just think they cook down really nicely. You're going to put in some olive oil. You're going to saute some thinly sliced mushrooms and tomatoes. So you can really use any vegetable. This is just really what the recipe calls for. And it just really goes so nicely. So we have our vegetables cooking over there. We have our polenta over here. It's looking really nice. It cooks pretty quickly. So I'm going to just simmer it for like a few minutes, let that cook. You want to keep stirring it so that it doesn't really stick to the bottom. It says really to let it simmer for 5 minutes, but it's been simmering for like 2 minutes and it's already looking really, really nice and creamy. I'm going to show you what the consistency looks like here so that you can see. It looks really nice and creamy already. I happen to really love polenta. I actually don't know if it's a love or hate. I think most people actually really like it or have just never really had it. So what we're going to do, keep this on a simmer and we're going to add some almond milk. So we're going to add a half a cup of almond milk. I'm really not one to ever show brands, by the way. I happen to love this brand of almond milk. It's the 3 Trees brand. It's super, super clean. There's no additives. It's water and almonds and it's pretty creamy. It's a really good one. I find it on Fresh Direct, but I've also seen it in some supermarkets. And I just really like how clean it is and how there's really nothing added to it. I'm always looking for things that don't have anything added, or especially plant milks, because a lot of times they do have some additives. So it's important to look for ones that don't. I put that in, but already it's making this super, super creamy looking. And then my next thing is nutritional yeast is a really, really great vegan way of giving that cheesy taste to things. I happen to love it. I love it on popcorn. It's a complete protein. There's 5 grams of protein. So really a complete protein is more between 6 and 8, but this is as close as you're going to get. So again, we're really making this more nutrient dense. The simple polenta, we're just really, really lifting up its nutritional value. So we're going to do 1/4 cup of the nutritional yeast. You can use less or more if you want. I love it because there's this like nutty but cheesy taste to it. It's completely vegan. It's really just yeast. You're going to mix that really well. You want to make sure it gets all incorporated into the cornmeal and into the polenta. And it's really just makes this super, super creamy, nutty, cheesy taste and consistency. And it's so, so yummy. So I'm going to show you what our polenta looks like right now. It looks like this. You can add a little bit of turmeric. It's a really pretty color. I was going to say that's what reminded me. It is a pretty color. The recipe calls for a tiny bit of turmeric. You don't need to add it. I happen to like the taste that it gives it with the vegetables. I think it goes really, really nicely. Make sure everything gets incorporated nicely. It really doesn't do much. You're only adding a tiny bit, like less than a teaspoon. So you're really not adding a lot, but adding a little bit, it definitely richens up the color a bit. And then that's looking really, really nice. Our polenta is looking good. So that's our base. I'm going to let this simmer for another minute or two, and we're going to get to our vegetables. So we have our tomatoes and our mushrooms cooking, because what we're going to do is we're going to add about 3 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, and that's actually going to help deglaze it. And it's also going to help kind of make a little bit of a sauce. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3. That's going to help deglaze the pan also if anything gets stuck. So you want to get all that tomato off there. and you're gonna let this sit for a few minutes. You want to let the balsamic vinegar thicken up a bit and make this a little bit saucier. I only do have one tomato in here, so it may not get as like saucy as my final product, which I'll show you, but it's gonna be good enough. Gonna let this cook and let that thicken a bit. I'm also going to add a little bit of onion powder and garlic powder while we're at it here. These are the only seasonings I'm using. Notice I don't use any salt or pepper, which is my preference in terms of cooking. I love not needing to use salt and pepper.
I feel like the nutritional yeast has a little bit of like it's not like it's salt, but it's like
it's like
enough flavor
umami.
that
It's like exactly.
yeah.
So this is coming together really, really nicely, and it's making that like base for that sauce. Then what we're gonna do is we're going to add about a cup of spinach. The recipe says to chop it. I find chopping spinach to be a waste of time because
shrink.
it's going to shrink anyway. So I'm going to put in some spinach, and you can put more or less, whatever you want. And then 1 can of white beans. Make sure you rinse and drain them because we want to get all that extra sodium off. So this is a really good protein pack topping, right? We have our beans, really, really good for cholesterol. We're going to let this continue to cook. The spinach is going to wilt down. I'm going to show you quickly how beautiful the polenta looks before I show you the final product. It's so creamy. It has a really nice yellow color. And this is the final product right here.
It looks lovely.
So you put the polenta at the bottom.
gorgeous.
And then you're just going to put the topping on top. And then I topped it with some pumpkin seeds to add to our nutrition dense polenta.